Okay. Hello, hello. Welcome back to our recording session on effective testing with RSpec 3. So today we're going to be covering Chapter 6, which is highlighting integration testing. So what exactly is the difference between unit integration and acceptance testing? I keep on going over this, but let's write it down real quick just for the sake of having it out on paper. So unit would be individual units in isolation. Like, let's say, method A by itself. Integration tests might be multiple units working together, such as we're testing a flow. And then if we were to go into end-to-end testing or acceptance testing, we're trying to test a full run of the application from front to back to make sure it works. So it sounds like we have two very distinct ideas here, with a unit being in isolation, the individual units, and end-to-end being kind of the very outermost layers. So where exactly does that leave integration tests? Because it sounds like you could probably do a majority of those through end-to-end or acceptance testing. Well, yes, you technically could, and lines are blurry there, but I do believe there is a spot in the middle for this. So let's see what exactly the book mentions here. It starts out by saying we have our routing layer defined with unit specs, and going through how we're writing those specs, how we're isolating that code, and assuming the underlying dependencies would eventually be implemented, test doubles, fake versions, etc. Eventually, if you get into this more, you'll see things like VCR or other mocking for HTTP requests. So integration testing, what the book is mentioning, is that we're actually going to implement the ledger class out of this for real and making sure the data is actually being stored. So the book has a little chart over here where an HTTP request goes in, it hits routing code, it hits our expense logic, which then hits our database adapter and eventually our database. So with our unit test, we were just testing this one routing layer right here. And forget my crude ASCII art for now. With integration testing, what we're doing is we're trying to hit this over here, which is routing the expense logic, adapter, and database to make sure those are actually flowing through. And if you're wondering how in the world I'm doing vertical highlighting, that would be Option, click, and then I can drag, or I can use arrow keys and other things. Nifty features. Very useful if you're doing column editing. Anyway, not the point. So let's get back into the book here. Okay. So hooking up the database, let's get all of this wired real quick. So expense tracker, gem file. Okay, that isn't there. We have WebRick and Pry, and then let's put these two at the bottom. If you weren't with us last time, we learned a very valuable lesson about following the exact versions that the book mentions. SQLite 3. Okay, so we got that. We can clear that. Make sure those two install. So that might take a second. So some of you might wonder, if you don't have database experience, what's the difference between SQLite, Postgres, MySQL, and all these other things? Well, let's put those into two camps of Postgres, MySQL, and everything else as true databases that are actually running complete binary. SQLite 3, more file store, think of. Yeah, and as always with native extensions, they'll take at least a second there. Okay, so we got that installed. Let's see what we got here. I'm going to steal the bin console over here. Okay, so we don't need that. Expense tracker, new folder, bin, new file, console. Don't need all that. Do need that. Don't need these. Okay, so why use this instead of IRB? Because we can do all of our setup right in here, require whatever we need, and go from there. I mean, to be fair, this SQLite 3 thing should probably be an actual application, but for now, let's try this out. Make sure we can execute that. And see if I mess it up at all. Cannot load such a file, expense tracker. Yeah, let's not worry about that for now. Let's just do IRB. I probably have to set it with the gem spec and everything, and I don't quite feel like doing that. Okay, so both of those work. We'll just go through the examples from that. Got that. DC. Typos abound, typos abound. Okay, so we have no gems in there. Insert one named RSpec, one named Sinatra, and then we have both of those. So that was just quick examples so we know what's going on here. Okay. So expense tracker config SQL. Too many folders, open again. Minimize, minimize, minimize. Okay. New folder config, and inside config we want SQL.rb. Okay, got that. We are under the creating a database header over here. So we have that, and then we're going to have I'm going to pull this out in a variable. Okay, so pull that out there. So for those who haven't seen fetch, fetch is going to try and find rackenv. If it doesn't, it's going to be development. Okay, so we got that. Okay, so I'm guessing they probably want a DB folder here in a second, so we'll just go ahead and make that. Okay, this configuration will create a database such as test or production DB, depending on rack and configuration place. Don't need to worry about overriding production data. Some more complicated things. So let's see here. Time to think of structure of data. So DB migrations is what it's wanting in there. Okay. And then inside there, create expenses. Key ID. And date there. So we have that. Let's actually make a bin command for this. Call it migrate, and then we don't care about all that. Never mind. Let's leave the binary thing alone. So I'm just going to re-implement rake tasks or something like that. So don't need that. Do need non-breaking spaces everywhere. Okay. So now we have SQL running over there. Let's see what we got here. Okay. Expense tracker, spec support DB. RB. Extension migration. Run all the migrations. Truncate all the data out of that. So this is ensuring that we have a clear database before we run anything. And before suite is saying run this before everything. Okay. Let's see here. Spec integration. Let's make a new folder. New file under here. Ledger spec.rb. Acquire relative. There are better ways to do this, but I'm just going to copy the book. And the reason they're doing this is to keep it simple. Okay, so we got all those. Got that. Do end. Five, 7, 5. Hello, hello. Let's see here. So we got that, we got that. We have date. I still think it's funny sometimes whenever you happen to see these dates in here and see how much older they happen to be. Okay, so we have that. And let's see what we got here. Did I miss a do or an end here? Nope. Nope, nope, just messing with me. That indentation is sketching me out a little bit. Okay, well, whatever. Okay, let's see here. So start in with the contexts. With a valid expense. Okay. One of these days I'll bother to update these all with single quotes, but today's not quite that day. Okay. Ledger record expense. Expect result to be a success. A hash including that. Ooh, ISO 8601. Okay. So one thing the book mentions are things like be success, which are predicate methods, which do something like if you have B underscore something, it's going to try and ask a question like B failure is going to be result dot failure or something like that. And then a hash including. A lot of these are using, so trick shot about RSpec is that all this stuff ends up using triple equals behind the scenes. Like, let's say we want to make our own of that real quick, just out of curiosity. mean, they're probably going to do something slightly different here. But essentially what we're doing is match.all, we have the key, and then the matcher, and then this would be something along the lines of, what in the world's up with the indentation in here? Anyway. Other hash fetch key, but matcher triple equals that. So we could say something like that. That should be true. And that's essentially how a lot of these things are working. I mean, they probably use some form of custom class instead of triple equals directly here, but it's probably going to be re-implemented to triple equals somehow. Just nice to know how those work. So if you ever want to make an RSpec matcher, triple equals behavior most of the time. It's actually also how pattern matching and a lot of other things work. Anyway, let's see here. Don't need that. Okay. The book mentions that we're putting multiple examples in the snippet, though, such as expect it to be a success and expect those to match this condition, which could hide failures. So the book mentions a trade-off here of if a database is going slow or something else, or tear down, boot up step, anything else happens to crash. We'd like to know about that. So this is kind of our base expectation, which is the thing even up? Is it even working? Okay, great. Now we can do the rest of our expectations. But if this happens to fail, it gives us additional information, which is it didn't fail because the result is wrong. It failed because something crashed in the back end, which is valuable information. So there are trade-offs with these things. Okay. Let's go ahead and run this. That should fail. Expense tracker support DB. Let's double check that. Okay. Yeah, they had one less dot dot. That's why I don't like these relative path things. Okay. Okay. Okay, let's see here. Where exactly are they requiring that? Okay, so currently we would be in spec support DB. So up one is spec, up one is root /config /SQL. Okay, let's make sure that's saved first. We have that. Now is that because I didn't save it or because of something else? Okay, yeah. There we go, which means that we can also take the configuration here off because we don't need it, and we also, oh wait, no, that we need, this we don't need. There we go. Okay. Let's make sure that's still behaving as expected. Let's see here. Interesting how match versus include. First expect all keys, latter just a subset. I go back and forth on some of these things because on like RSpec, do I want everything to be in there or do I just want these attributes? So let's say that I happen to change this to where it has a created at, updated at. That would be hard to test, so I don't exactly want those two in there. I just want to know, do you have the core pieces data in there? So in some case, that's not exactly quite as pure because you don't have everything, but in another case, it makes it a little bit more flexible to add data to your application later. So a bit of a consideration to make there. Okay. And then the book mentions an aggregate failure, which is, wait, where's results supposed to be in here? Let's make sure I have that first. Okay, so that is a failure they want. Okay. So it mentions there's an aggregate failure flag here, which is don't stop as soon as we have that first failure. Go ahead and run the second one. That way we can see what exactly we're doing in here. Did I spell that right? Aggregate failures. Aggregate failures. Okay. Now we have it. Okay, that'll work. Okay, and it says we're likely to want that for everything, so go ahead and put it up here. Got that here, don't need that here. Let's take that off. Save that. Okay, we're good. Okay, so app ledger. Let's go over here, so record. Yeah, I'll just do what the book is mentioning. DB expenses. I mean, of course, we probably want to do validations and everything else, but not quite the point of this. Max ID. Success true. Expense ID is that, and has no error message. And that should pass the integration test unless we've done something weird. Okay, got that. We have that. Testing the invalid case. Let's put that in there. Yeah, so what I was tempted to do is that. Actually, let's go ahead and do that, just for sake of it. Okay. That also means that we can go into our ledger spec and do this. Let's see if that still passes. Uninitialized constant expense tracker DB. Okay. I'm gonna make this complicated myself, aren't I? Okay, so that works. We got that, and now for that failure spec they're mentioning. Okay. It rejects the expense, it's invalid. Okay. Okay, so it's an inverse matcher there. Okay, so we have that. It's going to probably fail because we have two of those. Two samples, one failure. Let's see here. What exactly are we wanting to do? Okay. So spec helper, config order random. Let's see what we got here. Okay, so random is a good way to see if there are any weird flakes or anything else happening in your application. Because if something relies on something else, you might have something strange happen. Such as in this case, we have two things in there. And then we'll notice that there is a seed right here, so we could re-execute RSpec with that specific seed using seed, whatever that number is, right after RSpec. So that might be useful. Okay. Then RSpec can tell us what exactly we need to do to reproduce the failure. So let's start with just RSpec. Right. This is what I get for being fancy. Because we're not in Ruby 3 anymore, so we don't have that. Okay, let's see what else I managed to break. Oh, yep. Forgot a parenthesis. There we go. Now we're back to what we expect. Okay, so we have that. So now what we can do is run bisect against a seed to see what exactly causes that failure. Okay, so minimal reproduction command is RSpec right here. At these two locations. Okay. So then what it mentions is that we want to go back to our spec support DB over here. And then say c.around. Example with a tag of DB. So this will roll back anything which happened in any one of these specs. But we can go into spec helper here and say that's interesting and very specifically named. So it allows us to do that, which will probably allow us to clean up some of this stuff here. Which will allow us to do that here. So we don't need bisect. We can run that again. Okay. Oh, right. Do example. Silly me. Ooh, I have a sad cat. Okay, so that works. Good. Okay, so expense tracker, API spec. Need to tag that with DB as well. So we have both of those. Okay, so filling in the behavior. More care about that one. Okay. So we got that. So let's go back over to Ledger, wherever that may be. So here's some more validation. Okay, so we have that, and that should work. I said should. Y'all are supposed to call me out on those things if I typo something. Anyway, there we go. Okay, so querying expenses on, and then we're going back to that ledger. Too many tabs open again. Okay, so ledger spec. We have record here. Expenses on. I'm guessing this is date-wise. Why is my indentation broken in this? That's annoying. There are 3 of these. So we have that. 10, 10, and 11. Okay. So we got that. Expenses on that. To contain exactly result 1.expense ID, result 2.expense ID. Well, of course, this helps women in an it block. I cannot spell today. Oh well. So copy this. Got that. If we ran that, it would fail. because none of those things exist. Okay. So implementing that behavior, we go back over to ledger. Don't really want that. Okay, so that works. Run everything. It says there should be one pending over here. That should be over in the acceptance spec. So let's run that real quick. That's probably going to fail. There's something in there. Okay. There's that. So expense tracker API spec is getting that, is getting the API. Let's see here. Post to expenses, expenses/date. Yeah, well, that's because that doesn't exist. Okay. So where exactly were we getting that from? At ledger. Expenses on date. Actually, what params were there? Okay, yeah. Okay, so that failed. Undefined method bite size for that. Okay, let's see here. Just so we get a slight moment where we can see that. Yep, so that's a correct string. That's a correct date. Okay. Then we have ledger over here. see if I skipped a section of the book real quick here. No, it feels like that's just left out. Okay, so we have 3 posted expenses. Post expense, post expense, post expense. Yes, yes, yes. So we got that. Let's see what exactly we have in there. Last response, okay. Whoopsie. Let's just double check that real quick. Okay. I'm pretty sure it's something to do with the JSON method we have there. Yeah, so why are you stripping off all that? You shouldn't be doing that. I don't know if fail some more things, but still. Let's try that real quick. Why the devil is that happening? Okay, so that shouldn't change anything. So expense ID is coming out of post expenses. So why is that? Oh. Ah, that is awful. Okay, I know what it is. Okay, so silly me. So JSON right here is kind of worthless because it's in a let block. And let is cached, which means if it's called once, it's not going to work. So this should, okay. First off, to explain what exactly is happening, post expense goes through here. It has last response, and then it calls JSON. If that gets hit, then it's going to remember the expense ID from those post requests earlier, and the first one specifically of those. So that should fix it. Or at least get us a new failure. Okay. Yep. Wow. Silly me. That's what I get for trying to be clever. I should stop doing that. Okay, so testing the application for real. Let's go do. I swear, O'Reilly books. Non-breaking spaces everywhere. So we got that. If we happen to do that, it is going to fail. That is a long stack trace. No such table expenses. Okay. DB config SQL. Where's the migration thing that's over in DB over here? Yeah, I'm putting that over in here. All right. So 3 they had in there. Too many different things. Okay, now that should work. No such table expenses. Expenses, diplomat. Okay, more DB debugging, I suppose. Let's see what we got here. Oh, right. Okay, so that works. Oh, right, right. That's because Rackup probably doesn't remember that. Okay, there we go. we got both of those, and now we can query it, which will give us back both of those. Okay, there we go. And that gets us to the very end of that chapter. So that's a little bit of fun on debugging. Yeah, nothing ever works quite right the first time, so you always have to experiment a little bit. And of course, the more I try and be clever, the more I end up getting punished for it on some of these things. So I should probably stick directly to the book, but that's no fun because we get more debugging adventures if we do. Okay, so I think that's all the content I have for this chapter. Were there any questions or anything that people were curious about in here? I do appreciate the irony, though, that I'm naming it Coffee Co. instead of the actual name while drinking a coffee from the actual Coffee Co. Anyway, little things. Okay. So I think that's all we have for today on this chapter on integration testing. If you do have any other questions, feel free to post them over in our Discord group, which you can find on rubylearning.dev, and we can go from there. Next week, we'll be going back over to the Rails class on performance and covering that. We're going to be doing a new system, which is going to be doing bi-weekly on this of one RSpec, one performance, back and forth. If I finish one of them, we will backfill with the other classes. Anyway, thank you for coming out, everyone, and we will call it there. Have a great day.